Sagittarius 25, a chubby boy on a hobby horse. I wonder what's in this boy's imagination when he's playing on his horse. The chubby boy suggests somebody who's not really there with things going on at school. I imagine somebody is a bit lonely because he's bullied. That's maybe my imagination, but you get the sense that the phrase a chubby boy is not meant to indicate a person who is expected to be a high achiever. The opposite, that we're expecting this chubby boy to end up in a boring job and doing as he's told and being a bit disappointed with his life. That's the image that comes to my mind. But there he is on his hobby horse. It's a horse. He's imagining himself riding a horse. And in his imagination, he's not a chubby boy on a piece of wood. He's a field marshal, leading his country's forces to battle and rescuing his country from invasion by an enemy. And he's the hero, and he's a commanding force, and he's well popular with his men because he's a firm, just, courageous leader. That's what's going on in his imagination, or at least my imagination of his imagination. And this Sagittarius 25 is all about the power of imagination to move us on track towards realization. If we look at linguistically at the word imagination, magic and prayer and visualization and imagination, they pretty much synonymous. It's all about the process that we go through in taking something which is no form. It's just a bunch of electrical impulses in the brain and creating something which is real and goes down in history. We write things about this thing. That journey from imagination to some impactful reality is a process that we are all doing. It's not that we're just capable of it. Of course we are, but it's not just that. We have no other choice. That's the nature of life. That's how it all works. In the Hindu mysteries, you have Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva as the triplicity that expresses the whole mystery of life. And Brahma is the creative force. It's the power of the mind to create Maya, our illusion. And that is the case. We have to come to an understanding of that if we want to understand how life is. We make it up. All of this is just the outpourings of our imagination, all of it. And it becomes physical because that's the way it works. And this is explained now in physics. I would say modern physics, but it's not all that modern. This has been around for at least 100 years. Einstein's ideas were refuted in the early days by Heisenberg and so on, who demonstrated that what actually occurs physically in the world as reality depends upon what we expect. This is proven in physics experiments, and yet it is not yet assimilated into the common wisdom that we talk about and practice in our lives. We make it all up, and the facility for making it all up is in the imagination. Hence, let's imagine ourselves to be happy and abundant. Let's not, as Joni Mitchell would say, dream flat tires. If you go around anxiously expecting something horrible to happen, that's not a good idea. That's the very process that makes those horrible things happen. If you didn't imagine them, they wouldn't have happened, but that cannot be proved. What you imagine comes to pass. And even if you're a chubby boy on a horse and you imagine yourself to be a field marshal, well, you got 50 years to make it. And when you hear the stories of people that really made it in life, very often they imagined it when they were young. I hadn't to mention her name, but Margaret Thatcher, who became a very powerful woman, one of the most important women ever on this planet to have existed, actually, in some sense. She became the Prime Minister of England, which is very reminiscent of a photograph she had taken of her when she was a little girl outside the house of the Prime Minister of England, number 10 Downing Street. That photograph existed all of her life. She imagined where she was going as she got there. Even though she was the daughter of a grocer, she was nothing and she became everything by force of imagination plus. There are things to do after you imagine it. So we have to do those things. We have to learn. We have to learn whatever skills and knowledge, information, contacts are required for us to achieve our purposes. And there are processes that we can go through of training and discipline and taking exams. All of that helps. However, one of the loveliest secrets is that the best way to learn things really is through play. If we just follow our feelings of what would give us a good time, what would help us enjoy expressing ourselves more playfully, we find that the skills developed in that process of play are equally important as the skills that we develop in the processes of disciplined focus on our work. And this question of focus is really important. We have to keep our eyes on where we're going. If you're driving in a car, then you look at where you're going. If you don't, then it's quite a bad idea. You have to look where you're going. And we follow our glance. So if we want to look into the day's news and see all the misfortune in the world, well, that's where we're looking, and we're going to move our reality more and more and more in that direction of being in the presence of misfortune. If, on the other hand, we enjoy watching innocent things and we study beauty and we listen to music and we do all of the things that are playful and make us feel light-hearted, then that's what we're pulling into our lives. This is something to reflect on very carefully every day. In the morning, just what I do, I get up in the morning and I just think, what is it I'm going to do today? What do I want to happen today? I want to have a good time. I want to enjoy my garden. I want to, and I just plan my day in my mind's eye before I've got out of bed. I just wake up and I think, okay, what day is it? What am I doing today? What do I want to achieve today? And then very often, just before going to sleep at night, I just reflect on that day, and did I achieve what I intended to do? And what came to me unexpectedly as well? What was the day worth? So I do those two processes as a daily thing. This is what we must do with all of these spiritual wisdoms that we have the privilege of learning. We have to turn them into behaviors and make them normal routines for how we are, not some big deal. It's not a big deal. It's just, you have to imagine your day one by one, not your life, your day. And even in a moment, if you move into a new situation, let's say you're going to meet somebody for a cup of coffee just before you go in the cafe, just think, oh, what do I want to happen here? And maybe it is, I want to experience harmony. Or maybe it is, I want to tell that person what I'm doing. Or maybe it is, I want to learn more about this person and have that person be feeling more relaxed and expressive of our fondness for each other. If you do that, then that makes it ever so much more likely indeed. And if you don't do that, well, don't be surprised when you don't get what you want in life, because you haven't wanted it clearly enough. You've got to learn that. It's something that's important. One of the ways to build our imagination of what we want is to see what somebody else is. And if we have a role model, and we would really, really want to be the way they are, that's very helpful indeed. Choosing that role model carefully is a part of the game. So many people project fantasies onto rock and roll stars and movie stars. Oh, I wish I was an actress, and so on and so forth. And then they don't go to acting school, and they don't join the local drama society, but they still want to be a famous actress. Oh, it's nonsense, isn't it? So if you find a very high example of what you could become with enough perseverance and certainty of attention, then that's very helpful indeed. And stay with it for a long time, usually. And there comes a time when it's best to check out whether or not you've achieved your goal. Because if you've actually aimed for a certain person, and this is what one does. I've done this in so many ways. In my spiritual path, I've actually gone to a spiritual teacher, and I've really glamorized that teacher in a sense, thinking, oh my goodness, how I would wish I was like that. Only to find that his teaching was so good that I became like that, and then I'd look for another one. So it's always good just to check whether you've actually achieved your goal before getting caught up in a stuck situation. However, it's not really the achievement of the goals themselves that's important. It's improvement, just self-improvement. The goal's secondary. The juice is improvement.